In this section, we're going to add some sample data to those two panels that we created on our index page, featured courses and new courses. But before we can begin adding that sample data, we need to do a little bit of reorganization to our Angular code. Here in our app file, we've got the configuration for our module and the main controller. It's time to move that controller into its own file. Since this is the controller for the main page, I'm going to create a new folder in my client-side application called main. And that folder will hold all the files that have to do with the main page of my application. So I'll create the main controller file. I'm going to use the two-letter prefix MV for multi-view for all the files in my client application. I discussed naming conventions in my course on Angular best practices, so if you're curious about these conventions, I recommend you watch that course. And then I'll cut this out of here and paste into there. I'm also going to rename it here and go back to my configuration and rename it where I've specified the controller. Now I've also got to add a reference to that file inside of my scripts include file. And now the file should be getting delivered to the page. Let's just check that our application is still working correctly with these changes. Okay, everything looks fine. Now that I've got my Angular code organized the way that I want it, I can add some sample data to my main controller. And that sample data will be available for binding in the featured courses and new courses partial files. So I can delete this line now, and I'm just going to paste in a bunch of sample data that I created previously. Each of the items in this sample data has a name, whether or not the course is featured, and when the course is published. This is the data that I'll need in order to display it in those two areas. Now let's go into our featured courses partial and add some HTML and bind to this data. So I'll take out the placeholder text, and inside of the panel body I'll add a row and use the ngRepeat directive so it'll create a row for every item in the data set that I want to display. Now I want to do a little bit of filtering on that data. I want to set up a filter so that only the courses that have the featured property set to true will show up. And for that I'll use the filter, and I'll set that the featured property has to be set to true. And then for each row inside of here, I'll create a column that's full width and just add the course name. And that'll be good enough for now. Now let's go to our new courses partial. And again, we'll take out the placeholder text. We'll do the same thing and add a row with the ngRepeat directive. Now I have to do some filtering again. Now I only want to show 10 courses in both the featured and new featured sections of the page. But since a user is going to select the featured courses, I can trust the user to only select 10. Whereas new courses, I need to limit it to 10. But I also need to order by the published date. So I can't just limit to 10 first and then order by the published date, otherwise the ordering will be wrong. So I need to set up two filters. First the order by, and then a filter that will limit it to only 10 rows. Now to display this data, I'm actually going to have two columns. The first column is going to show the published date, and that's only going to be 1/4 of the space. And I'll filter that so that it's formatted like a date. And I want to show the format with a 3-letter month, and then a 1-digit day. And then my second column will be the other 75%. And that will have the name of the course in it. Now let's go see our changes in the browser. I'll refresh the page. And now we can see our sample data showing up just the way we want it.